Unprecedented announcement today from the International Olympic Committee. Russia has been banned.
And this sport, which has brought so much pride to Greece, is now a source of national shame.
23 athletes at the London 2012 Olympics have failed retrospective doping tests.
We should not let this sport leave the Olympics.
The shit show that has been weightlifting.
We are coming to the end of another year in the sport of weightlifting, but with it comes the most precarious time within our sport. Our Olympic spot is under threat, a spot we have held for the last 125 years. And this is because we have a load of problems in the sport of weightlifting. But to understand these problems, we have to go back 80 years to when these problems began. It is very hard to pinpoint exactly when our problems began, but an educated guess will tell you that this story starts roughly after World War II. The fall of Nazi Germany at the end of World War II reignites the new geopolitical tug-of-war that is the Cold War. Countries all over the world are picking their sides in this new post-World War II era, all using any opportunity they can get to flex their own political muscle. And naturally, as it has always been, even in the ancient Olympics, one way you can flex your political muscle is at the Olympic Games. During this time was the discovery and rampant use of performance-enhancing drugs. And every single country knew that if they wanted to win in this new geopolitical theatre, that they would have to take performance-enhancing steroids. Because if they didn't, the opposition would. And the sport of weightlifting epitomized this new mindset, right? Everyone knew that the one thing that steroids did was make you stronger. And that is the whole point of our sport. So throughout the 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, every single country in weightlifting, and I do mean every single country when I say that, either dabbled in performance enhancing steroids or went full steam ahead into creating a proper program to make sure that their lifters had the best steroids available. And during this story, the international governing body, the IWF, sees an opportunity for itself. Instead of thinking, hey, how about we stop all the steroid taking, they have a much more cunning and insidious plan. Those within the IWF decide that if they can control the doping, then they can control the federations. And if they can control these countries, they can have power, which they can hold on to for as long as they want. And so begins this vicious circle of corruption and doping within the sport of weightlifting. Countries want to win, so they start doping programs. The IWF starts to control this doping, right? They do this through many means. One is not testing athletes that they know are going to be positive. Another is outright bribery, bribing testers to look away when identification is needed. They also hide positive results for months, years on end, with some athletes never actually serving a ban despite testing positive. What happens then is that in return, the IWF asks these countries to keep them in power. And they do this through bribery, through certain doping fines that they have collected in cash over the years. If countries vote for these individuals to stay at the top of the organization, they get a nice briefcase in cash in return and a blind eye to the doping. These countries are benefiting from this system and are very happy with the corruption in place. They are winning gold medals and getting their geopolitical bit of fame that they need so much. So they go back and dope some more, and thus the vicious circle of corruption and doping continues for decades on end. And some call this time from the 60s into the 90s and early 2000s the golden age of weightlifting. We had countries like Bulgaria absolutely ruling the world of weightlifting. All of the scientific research comes from the Soviet Union. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, it was the golden age of Greek weightlifting. Russia, China, Kazakhstan, all great weightlifting nations, were all able to rule the weightlifting world thanks to corruption and cronyism. One of the problems with the system as it currently exists is that we see the rise and fall of so many great weightlifting nations. And this happens mainly because these countries used to be in favor with the powers that be at weightlifting, and then they weren't. We have seen so many countries rise to the top of our sport only to unceremoniously disappear altogether. So here we are. It's 2021, and as the year draws out to a close, the sport of weightlifting is feeling the consequences of its history. Within the last 2 years, all the dirty corruption that has been rife within our sport has made its way into the public light. On June the 4th, 2020, an investigation into the IWF produced this 121-page document called the McClown Report. It shows in full detail how the IWF has been run like a mafia, with the former president Tamina Sayan ruling with a tyranny of cash for at least the last 30 years. It details out all of the corruption, doping, sample manipulation, vote buying, and bribery and potential embezzlement. Now, with all of this information out in the public light, the IWF has been faced with an ultimatum: change, or you will get kicked out of the Olympics. Now, regardless of your opinion on everything going on right now, there is one thing you have to get inside your head, and that is that the sport, as it currently exists now in its current format, is going to change. And there are two ways that this pans out. One, the IWF dig in their heels and keep the status quo, and forces the IOC's hand to kick them out of the Olympics. What happens then is that our sport will break up and become fractured. With no Olympic status, there will be less desires to stay within the IWF, and we'll see the formation of new federations with their own rules and their own sport. The sport of weightlifting as it looks now will start to look very different very quickly. We will see multiple versions of our sport, each one a different mutation of the sport that existed prior, with no one really knowing which one is the true version of the sport of weightlifting. Or, number two, the IWF changes. The old guard get kicked out and a newer, younger blood takes over, weeding out the corruption and rebuilding our sport into something better. Maybe we'll see new styles of competitions, more investment from big brands, a vibrant and forward-thinking sport that also still has that prestigious Olympic status. The question for you, viewer, is what version of the future do you want to see? And what role can you play to make that future become a reality? The answer to these questions will be revealed in my next video. So if you want to know more about the part that you can play, make sure you subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell. And the answer to all of these questions will be revealed in the new year. I'll see you there.